Maximum freedom. Read.
Stay on target.
Maximum freedom.
Stay on target.
Maximum freedom. Read Rothbard.
Hello and welcome to the Actual Anarchy Podcast, the podcast where we talk about movies from a Rothbardian Anarcho-Capitalist perspective. Tonight is we're ringing in the new year, so we're going to be dragging up an old classic from just 30 years ago. It doesn't seem that long ago, but it is sort of centered on New Year's Eve, or a very prominent portion of the movie is. Of course, we're doing When Harry Met Sally. Why not do a rom-com as we end out the decade of the 2010s and go into the 2020s for a new year that is sure to be full of political strife, many liberal tears, probably some conservative tears as well. It should be a lot of fun. Perhaps we will also have a, another financial crisis or something along those lines. Speaking of financial crises, Robert, how are things going on the work front there?
Speaking of financial crises?
Yeah, the exact opposite. You guys are doing great. Gangbusters.
Yeah, I mean, that's the plan. I don't think we've tapped the market here yet. We just really kind of getting started. We're just a single operation, but we're hoping to expand rapidly and, serve the whole county.
Did I see that you guys were open on Christmas Day?
If you did, that was a flagrant, slanderous lie. Because no, we were not.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll have to talk to their social media manager about that one. I thought that perhaps you guys were being exploited by the evil capitalist who was making you guys Scrooge-like work on Christmas Day, Bob Cratchit style.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't put it past him. My boss is the kind of slave driver that would drive the slaves to work on Christmas Day, Christmas Eve, any other day. But no, he was actually out of town, so he couldn't quite crack the whip as hard as he wanted to, probably.
All right. Well, that's good to hear. I'm glad you got a little respite from yourself. So, well done, sir. Well done. Well, I don't want to delay this much longer because, when we decide we want to have a guest on, we want that guest to be on as soon as possible. And so
yeah,
let's get into that last night's portion of the show and introduce her.
Okay.
Hey everyone, it's Daniel Elwood and Robert Johnson, the Last Nighters, and Last Nighters can be found on the Launchpad Media, where they're always launching new ideas in your direction, as can our guest, as she is part of the Johnny Rocket show Blastoff with Johnny Rocket and Raylene Lightheart. I just let the cat out of the bag, and we are going to make her meow as we talk about When Harry Met Sally, and we'll be having what she's having. This is episode 104 of the show. It's our New Year's show. The crux of this movie ends on New Year's Eve, so why not do a the old rom-com with a double dose of crude humor and witty charm from this holiday classic starring Billy Crystal and Meg Ryan. Raylene, how are you? Welcome to the show.
Thanks. I love to be with you guys. This is so fun. A favorite movie of mine. I'm doing well.
Well, great. We had you on for one of your other favorites, The Karate Kid, just a few months ago, and it was a very excellent episode, and we were very pleased with how it turned out and excited to have you back on for your other favorite. Now, you sound like my kids because they tend to use favorite for almost everything, and we're trying to make it clear to them that a favorite means that you're selecting one of many to be the top tier. So where does this movie sit between Karate Kid and When Harry Met Sally for you?
Ooh, Karate Kid, I have a bigger emotional connection to, but this is my favorite rom-com. It is the godfather of rom-coms, in my opinion, so I think it's the best one. And my husband was just laughing because he goes, wow, we had this exact same relationship, but in a much more condensed version. It wasn't like 11 years to get together. So it was very similar.
All right, very good. Well,
but you guys were friends first?
Yeah.
It is possible.
Big time. Yeah, well, we kind of lied to ourselves just like they did in a beautiful, very romantic fashion.
That's what we need here. The heartwarming stories to brighten our hearts and homes during this holiday period. So yeah, Christmas just occurred, and we're coming up on New Year's here. So welcome to 2020, everyone, and welcome to the show, Raylene. This is, like I said, episode 140. You can find the show notes and more at lastnerd.com/104, and also find the show at the Launchpad Media, where they're always launching new ideas in your direction. TheLaunchpadMedia.com, where you can also find Raylene's show, Blastoff with Johnny Rocket and Raylene Lightheart. Now, you guys have been back at it again. Is that right? You have a couple more episodes in recent times?
Yeah, we have like 4 in the can. Our editor just got back with us, and we're putting it all back out there. I can't wait to get recording. We have a few shows in the can ready to go, but I am ready to get back in there. So is Johnny. Just talked to him today.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to that. And also, I need to extend an invite to have him on the show as well. He's a great guy, and I think he'd be excellent talking about whatever he wants. I know there's no keeping him quiet, so.
I love him. If you guys ever want to do a MASH, that's his favorite. I don't know if that's
The
you guys
movie?
do TV shows. No, well, they have a movie, didn't they?
They do.
Yeah, they did before
He
the
probably
show.
would want to do that. No joke. He loves it.
Yeah, I think there's, if I recall, there's some pretty good anti-war messaging in there.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's probably a worthy movie of doing.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of worthy movies and worthy times, let's get into this with the El Google description, where we kick this off. So, When Harry Met Sally came out in 1989, rated R due to Billy Crystal's crude humor. Drama / romance, 1 hour 36 minutes, though plays much longer in my opinion. 7.6 IMDb, 90% Rotten Tomatoes, 4 out of 5 on Common Sense Media, and 88% of Google users dog whistled this one with their approval. The description is, in 1977, college graduates Harry Burns and Sally Albright, played by Billy Crystal and Meg Ryan, respectively, share a contentious car ride from Chicago to New York, during which they argue about whether men and women can ever truly be strictly platonic friends. 10 years later, Harry and Sally meet again at a bookstore, and in the company of their respective best friends, Jess and Marie, played by Bruno Kirby and Carrie Fisher, or Princess Leia, an attempt to stay friends without sex becoming an issue between them. Came out July 12th, 1989. Director is Rob Reiner. Niner? Is that here? Niner in there? And the screenplay by Nora Ephron, and features the Harry Connick Jr. ballads such as It Had to Be You. So, Robert, let's go to you for your initial reaction. Then we'll go to Raylene.
Well, I wonder how much of the original manuscript was actually on the screen. You mentioned that Billy's humor brought it to an R rating. I would imagine that they hired him and he ad-libbed a whole bunch of stuff that made it into the movie, and then they were like, well, we're not going to cut it and we'll just leave it as an R, even though R comedies generally tend to make less money, especially back in the 80s. They probably would have wanted a PG-13 rating. But I mean, rewatching this movie, it just struck me how well good writing transcends time. This movie really plays up the differences between men and women, and that's essentially eternal until human beings become some sort of other thing, maybe in the future of evolution of us. I don't know. But until that happens, I think this movie is going to play really well. And yeah, you could watch it today and still find plenty to enjoy about it. I don't think, I mean, other than the specific lifestyle parts of living in New York in the 80s, which is kind of minimal. It's just the setting. I mean, I think you could totally enjoy it as much today as it was when it was originally released.
Yeah, I would agree with a lot of those sentiments. The only thing that really stood out to me was, the clothing and hairstyles being a bit dated, and the giant telephone that was in one of the scenes. I was like, what the hell is that? I haven't seen one of those in like 2 decades. Raylene, what's your take on the Google description and what Robert had opened with?
Okay, so I agree that this does stand the test of time. The writing is amazing. The humor is on point. I do happen to know not a lot of trivia on this one, just a little bit. There was ad-libbing, and there was a few scenes where it wasn't planned, and then they kept rolling with it and it worked out. And I also know that Meg Ryan was the one that thought of the orgasm scene going the way it did. So she had her part in that too, which I thought was really fun. It wasn't even supposed to be in a restaurant, supposedly, in the original script. So I think that's really great. I do want to say what is different is that who knew that a benign movie like When Harry Met Sally would become so counterculture? There is so much in there about the difference between men and women that could be seen as total patriarchy stuff, very outdated about, jokes, which we can go into later on the show about how it is to be single and men and women and the difference. And I have to say that the media now doesn't really show it like that, like it did then. Even though I think everyone kind of agrees that there is a lot of truth in it still. So I think it's very romantic and fun. And I think that the way they drive each other crazy and end up when there's no pressure, how it is way less of a relationshipy thing. And you can really be very close to people who show a different side of life than how you live it.
Yeah, I think those are very good points. And the point I wanted to make was that I think that, along the lines of the patriarchal presentation here, I feel like this is a movie that also couldn't really be made today, not without becoming problematic and Billy Crystal being, tweeted out of existence or whatever, probably getting fired from doing the Oscars and all that because of how he portrayed being a man and coming on to her, but sort of not, and a lot of the subtle negging that was going on, which I gotta admit, I mean, it's a functional tactic, it works. And many of the things that were brought up in this movie became cultural tropes or things that originated in this movie, like the high maintenance, low maintenance thing. And gosh, there was something else. Maybe it was related to the men and women can never be friends or truly be platonic friends because sexual is getting in the way. Those kinds of things were introduced, and I think it became part of culture going forward, whether people were aware of the movie or familiar with the movie or not, or aware of the connection or not. I think that it kind of paved the way for that kind of a thing to be identified almost in a Seinfeldian kind of way.
I was going to say it's pre-Seinfeld, the observational humor and the way of taking these situations and calling it out. Hey, have you ever noticed this? And isn't it weird when? I mean, honestly, it's so good. Oh, it's great.
Yeah, and that banter, the quick-witted banter, it reminds me of who was the guy who did The Social Network and Molly's Game, Robert. We just did those movies not too long ago. Like he's the Aaron Sorkin.
That's the Aaron Sorkin. Yeah, he's the West Wing guy.
Yeah. Where I think he does it in a very scripted way, but it's that very rapid fire call and response between the characters, and it's like fun to watch that because it's like nobody talks like this in the real world. No one's that quick and that quick-witted, but you see it here in Billy Crystal. A lot of that stuff was ad-libbed on the spot. I mean, they kind of had a loose script. I think it was based on Rob Reiner's divorce from Penny Marshall and his period of dating, being newly single and in the dating world. And Billy Crystal was one of his best friends. So what the relationship we see depicted here between Billy Crystal and Bruno Kirby, Jess, is Billy Crystal and Rob Reiner. Just Crystal is playing Reiner in the movie. And they were friends, Crystal and Rob Reiner, from doing many movies together, including The Princess Bride, which was, of course, an excellent movie. And the other thing that I didn't quite realize until just watching this again was Meg Ryan's breakout role. Like prior to this, she was in some, General Hospital or some
Inner Space.
Well, she was in Top Gun.
Yeah, Top Gun is like a bit part, but memorable, pretty memorable. Take Me to Bed or Lose Me Forever, that kind of a thing. But this was the one that really broke her out into the rom-com sphere or stratosphere.
Which kind of defined her career for the next 10 years, but yeah.
Right, because then you get into Sleepless in Seattle and When Harry Met, or
You Got Mail.
And then there was another one she was in with Tom Hanks as well, I think, that was romantically...
Joe versus the Volcano, right?
Yeah. So yeah, kind of, I mean, yeah, she's a different character in all of them, but she's really the same character in all of them when it comes down to it. And she really was the perfect foil to Billy Crystal in this movie, because she is like this very uptight, very specific person who like knows exactly what she wants when it comes to like superfluous stuff, but not in what she wants like in her life as far as goals go, until she hits that like that point in a woman's life when they're like, all right, the baby timer starts kicking. What do you call that? The clock?
The internal clock, which she mentioned, doesn't start until you're like, did she say 37 or 36?
Yeah, 36.
But obviously then her story about the little girl that she took, and then she realized that she wanted to have kids. So she was belying her narrative in that story. And the real truth when she really told that story was that she does want a family and she does want someone to want to marry her. I thought that was really lovely.
Right. And it was why her and Joe broke up.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't just that she had those desires to, kind of nest and settle down. But it was also because they wanted that freedom to be able to fly off to Paris and have sex on the banister or whatever the heck they were talking about doing. But then she
Spanish
said,
tiles.
Yeah. But then she said, but we never do that. Mm-hmm. So it's like you have that freedom, but you never realize it, or you never take advantage of it. So really you're squandering that as well. Now I'm not like trying to advocate for, go ahead and do all this hedonistic stuff. But what I'm saying is if you want to have freedom to do something and then you don't do it, then you're kind of unfulfilling even that, so you might as well do something worth value, right? Like you really wanted to have
about setting the goals. I was just having this really awesome talk today with somebody who lives with us, my friend Erica, and we were talking about freedom, and freedom is so important to all of us that live here. But then I was explaining that sometimes the idea of freedom is more, we can kind of become obsessed with the idea of freedom, but you still have responsibilities. So you're free to be an a-hole to people, but it isn't really giving you what you want or fostering the right life for you. And you're free to not do any of your dishes or clean your house or take care of your kids. That said, there are consequences to that. And sometimes you have to sacrifice freedom for what you actually want. And that is there's a freedom in that too, is letting go of the narrative and the idea and embracing what is actually right for you.
Right. And of course, the freedom you're talking about is not freedom from government.
Right.
But, freedom voluntarily chosen, like responsibilities voluntarily accepted.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you for the clarification.
Well, it's not for you. It's for, it's for the normies out there. I know there's a couple.
Yeah.
Robert, your take on some of this stuff, because I know you're still in that seeking phase, I think, right? Like you're in that, you have that freedom. And you're devoting it in an entrepreneurial way now. But what's your take on the movie and kind of the angle we're talking about here?
Well, yeah, the movie hit me, I think, probably a little differently than any of you guys. I mean, you guys are in committed long-term relationships, but this is a movie about two people dealing with loneliness and unhappiness and all the trials and tribulations of the single life. And I think multiple characters throughout the movie were like, man, this single life sucks. This is balls. I don't want to do this anymore. Can I just hurry up and settle? Because nobody says that, but
he said that. He goes, I didn't want to date anymore. He literally got married to Helen because he didn't want to be out there anymore. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes he moans.
Okay. I have done that. I mean, have you guys ever actually indulged in the moaning with the lights off? Because it's fantastic.
I can't say I've done that.
Just do it. Just lean in. Just have a couple
that good?
drinks
Just
and lay
lean
there
into
and
the
moan.
pain.
Like, sometimes it's really fun to just indulge in the drama of the situation. I mean, I don't partake in actual drama like conflict. I hate that shit. But leaning into the big passionate feelings we have. I mean, there's something actually. And by the way, Billy Crystal does an excellent job of that in this movie. We have Billy Crystal, who's actually 100% in touch with his feelings. He's grieving. He's expressing himself. He's really leaning into being lonely and being sad and really embracing this season in his life and what he doesn't like. And he's the one communicating his feelings, which we always hear about women doing that and men not doing that. So I really love the spin on in this movie on the men and women, because he is the one communicating actual feelings, feeling them right now. And then Sally, Meg Ryan's character, is so controlling, so type A, and we see that, which is where the hijinks are, obviously, because the two are so different. But what she's doing is pretending that she's over it sooner. She's taking this grieving period, and she has a plan, and she's trying so hard to stick to the plan that she's not really feeling the feelings, which is when they had the moment where they came together finally, and I'm going to say screwed up and slept together and made it weird. When that happened, it was everything they both wanted. And he didn't want to let himself feel that. That was the one thing he was holding back from himself, because he didn't want to screw it up, because he didn't think he could do it right. He wanted to keep her. He wanted to keep her so badly that he lied to himself. She wanted to keep him so badly that she lied to herself, but she was lying about all of her other feelings too. And then when Joe was going to get married and she realized that he was never in love with her enough to want to marry her, that was like the straw that broke the camel's back. Then she just got real. She got real finally. And I mean, they could have never ended up together if that didn't happen. So I kind of like the role reversal there for the gender.
Yeah. Yeah. And if anything, Billy Crystal's arc was to learn how to better control his emotional outbursts and not be as so direct and confrontational and judgmental of others. Granted, he often said it in witty ways. And so I enjoyed the humor of it, but yeah, I can imagine that would rub a lot of people the wrong way. I feel like
judgmental too. They both had their own judgments, right?
Right. And you're right. Meg Ryan, she had to kind of let go and kind of give in to the moment. I mean, it took, by the end, her being confronted with Billy saying, all those neurotic things about you, I actually love them. Because they're what make you you, and you're unique. And so this isn't just because I'm lonely or because, I feel bad. This is because I have genuine feeling for you, and it's been developing for a long time, and it's destined to happen or not that, like, I don't want to get, forget to put in the crystals here and, say destiny and chakras and all that crap. But it made it for a nice ending, which apparently was not the original intended ending. Efron and Reiner were like, we don't want them to end up together at the end. But
fuck off.
Obviously, it worked in this one.
It worked. I know, because I did it. It worked for us. I mean, if I would not have fallen in love with my husband in complete denial of us being anything other than friends, it wouldn't have worked at the time and where I was at in my life, and for him too. So, I have to say that falling in love with somebody as your best friend so you can keep them is the best thing in the entire world, as long as they're doing the same thing. It's kind of torturous and very romantic, and it is absolutely, you get to know them all the way. I got to know all of my husband's secrets. Like, I love that. Having somebody, when a guy's not actively trying to sleep with you, and I say this as a woman, I mean, listeners can disagree all they want, but when a guy's not actively trying to sleep with you and they're talking to you about other women and talking to you about themselves and their secrets and just letting go of all their embarrassing things and giving them to you. And I was able to make him feel safe. It made me feel safe because I was getting to know the real him. And I see that with Harry and Sally, that they saw everything about each other, and they still like each other. I mean, they were each other's biggest fans. What's not more romantic if you can make that work? Right?
All right. So I'm going to throw the challenge flag out on this one, Raylene. I mean, sure, it worked in your case. You're the exception, not the rule. Because I think that many, especially in this day and age, men, for the lack of a better term, get in this situation where they're like in the friend zone.
I'm actually one of the women that believes that the friend zone exists. So just keep it coming. Go on.
Okay. So a lot of guys like try this. They try to be there for women who are dating other guys, and they try to be the shoulder to cry on or whatever, and then end up being in that non-romantic position of, I don't know what is that's
yeah,
not...
it's the beta backdoor gambit, and it doesn't work.
Yeah, you can't be a beta. Like the whole thing is, yes, you're right. So I am definitely a lady who likes an alpha male. Just throwing that out there. So I totally know what you guys are saying, and I agree. I think there has to be a point, especially for men, where you kind of say, "Cut the shit. I like you, and I'm going to withdraw all of this awesomeness if you don't give me a chance." I think a man has to be willing to say, "All right, I hooked you, and you got to fucking hook them." So be good enough so that lady sees your worth, and when you withdraw it, then she's going to go, no, I can't handle that. I want you. Like, if she's not doing that, then you were not offering all up what you thought you were. Just throwing that out there. Am I wrong?
I feel like we're on Dr. Drew right now. This is good stuff here. This should be premium content.
Honestly, I mean, I'm here. Like, I am a friend to men. And I have a lot of sexist things that people would accuse me of being sexist, but I'm telling you right now that if you are a man that recognizes and that you want a woman, and you're pretending to be a friend when you know you want them and you're actively seeking that out, you are doing beta stuff. So if you know that you want them, you have to let them know that you're not messing around, that you're accepting the friendship right now, but that when you find somebody else, you're going to move on, and that you're not there to be taken advantage of. I think that women sense that and don't want it. They want a guy that says, "Cut the shit, get with me, or get the fuck out." That's sexy. So
right.
that.
And it takes a while to develop that. I mean, you have to be secure in your person and kind of have developed who you are.
Mhm.
And I mean, we see that in this movie where early on, Billy Crystal is that emotional cad, and it wouldn't have worked out in that early part of the film.
Oh,
Like, he needed to work on himself and become more comfortable with who he is before he was ready to be in that committed relationship with her, and vice versa with her as well.
they both matured beautifully. The dialogue matures too throughout the movie. In my notes, I wrote, "Harry delights in making it awkward." Now he's just a troll. So that's like, you watch it and you can see him, and it reminds me of my husband, who likes to troll people to get a reaction, and he thinks it's hilarious, and it's just for him. And Harry does that. Uh, Harry also trollishly adopts new info as if it was his own idea. Now, the greatest in the beginning, he does it throughout the movie, but it's hilarious when he's doing the whole "it's out there." So he kind of hits on her. She calls it out, like, all offended. It's adorable. He's like, "No, I wasn't." And then he goes, "But what if I was? So what? Can we just pretend, like, take it back?" And she's like, "You can't take it back. It's already out there." And he goes, "Oh, it's out there. It's out there." So he makes fun of the word "out there," or the term "out there." And then he stops talking. And then he brings it up again about how women and men can't be friends because the sex is already out there, is at the end of that whole rant, which is hilarious because Harry is a ultimately beautiful troll that has taken a term that he was making fun of her for, which is the nagging that you were talking about, and then wraps it into his own definition of something he wants to be right about within minutes. How great is that?
Yeah, that's what I said. Yeah, he said that a lot, which was funny. And that was in his immature portion of the movie. He didn't say that kind of stuff by the end.
Yeah.
I mentioned that the telephone, which was like almost out of place now because of how old the movie is. But did you notice Princess Leia packing a Rolodex that she brought with her to lunch?
Oh, yeah.
This is the sexist stuff that I was talking about. Okay, and not only that, but the other friend, the secondary friend who's not Carrie Fisher, says, I wrote it down, at least you can say you were married. Dead. I died.
Yeah, no, that was back when, that was the 5 years in, or was that the 10 years in moment? So she would have been either 26 or 30, 31.
I think that was the 10 years in. And that was very, like, there was a little bit of a Yenta feel to it. And it could be a New York Jewish culture thing happening with the fixing people up. I didn't know if that was a nod to the Jewish neighbors in New York or not. Or if it was just, I mean, think about who made the movie, so it would make sense. But the whole bringing a Rolodex. It's hilarious. And she was trying to fix her up with somebody who she's already fixed her up with. Right. And then she goes, Joe's single. She wanted to grab the Rolodex again. She's like, oh, he's single. You didn't tell me. I got to tell everybody. I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah, I liked it when she found out he was married. She just folded down the corner as if, well, it's just a temporary thing. Don't worry about that.
She goes, shame.
Well, and with her, she didn't. That wouldn't have been a disqualifier, right? Because she was dating or having an affair with a guy who was married, right? And that was the consistent refrain was she's never going to leave her.
Yeah, and they were like, never.
Yeah, his wife, yeah.
And she's like, I know. You're right, I know. Right. But how great is it in this movie? They do a really good job of showing that when you're in love with somebody, really, a lot of people think they're in love or they question it or they're always trying to process it. And love is bigger than logic. It just is. I mean, logic's great and important, and I'm all about processing things logically. But the way when you're in love, you don't give an F. When you're in love, you're going to stay the night. When you're in love, you're going to commute 2 hours earlier to work so you can be with the person you want to be for longer. And when her best friend meets Jess, his best friend, and the way they are immediately, how cute they clicked, and then they were running off together on a cab, right? That's what it's like when you're in love. And Carrie Fisher's character was wasting years and years and years with a married man being treated like she was less because she was expecting less. And there's a big, huge lesson for women in this, and men too. I mean, why are we wasting our time with somebody who does not love and appreciate us? Because every minute that you waste, if you can't work it out and they don't seem to care, what are you doing there? Because you are literally stopping yourself from finding somebody who's actually going to love and appreciate you. That's my take.
I do have one minor rebuttal to that, and it goes in line with the maturation process.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't ready to be in a long-term committed relationship in my early to mid 20s.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of needed some of those. You both know it's not serious.
Yeah.
But you're dating and you're figuring out who you are and how you interact with another in a closer relationship. So,
well, there's nothing wrong with that if everybody's on board with it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So don't be wasting the other person's time. Like, make it known like, hey, I enjoy being with you. I'm not sure if I, want it to be like totally super long term, but let's enjoy each other and all that stuff.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's just negotiating your contracts. I mean, this is an ANCAP podcast, so it's really important for all anarchists or anybody who's even toying with the idea of voluntarism and free associations. You own yourself, you own your relationships. So it's up to all of us to negotiate these contracts. Can you imagine, you guys, if everybody actually got real and sat down and negotiated the contracts? Like, I'm never going to dump the garbage. I'm going to tell you every week that I'll dump the garbage, but I'm going to conveniently forget and you're going to get mad at me. I'll never change this. And they're going to go, okay, yeah, I'll take that. But then I'm always going to leave my clothes on the floor. I'm never going to feel sorry about it no matter what. I mean, this is the kind of contracts that we're all actually creating in our relationships with people, but no one ever says any of it. Why don't we? Like, let's just do it.
Yeah,
Did I just blow your guys' minds? I mean, I know that I'm a girl, but I think that, and this is a very man thing to say, but why isn't everyone just getting real and saying, I'm never actually going to care about this. I can try. I might do it for you, but I might not. And are you going to be okay with that? Because that's what every relationship is.
It seems like that might cross some kind of a line.
Really?
Well,
ambiguity sucks balls. Okay. Like, that's why relationships fall effing apart. Like, it's like,
right. But when you come right out and you say that I'm not going to do X for no matter what, it kind of comes off as I'm not going to try hard in this relationship.
I hear you.
I'm not going to put the effort in.
It's kind of like this. How important is this to you, really? My husband is so cute. I love him. He's a scientist. And one day I'm in my closet and I'm pulling something out to wear, and I find a Tupperware under my sweaters. I can't see what it is. I pull it out, and there's like larvae in it. Okay. And I'm like, WTF. Okay. I'm like, oh my God, my husband, what is this? These like larvae. And it has a saran wrap top. I'm like, these could get out. They're in my closet, in my clothes. So I'm start to clean my closet out. I find another habitat in my closet, in my clothes of soldier flies. Okay. So he's breeding these to feed to fish or something. He's amazing. Okay. He's amazing. But this is one of those things where he's never going to change being like that. That's something that I just have to accept. And I love him. And he means well. I was like, don't put these in my clothes anymore, please. Like, don't do this. This is completely unacceptable. And I just established how important it is to me that they're not in my closet and I know where he's putting them, but he's never going to change it. So for me, it's kind of like, I mean, you should try if it really matters to them, but it's all a negotiation. We basically just kind of have a list of things that we can put up with, even though it annoys us, of the other person, right?
So
Sure.
he's putting bot flies in the baby fish mouth.
Baby fish mouth sweeping the nation. That's great. I don't know. I'm really loud and obnoxious, and he puts up with it. So, I mean, I'm sure he didn't go out thinking, I can't wait to find the loudest, most obnoxious, biggest personality, a lady who jumps around when talking like an insane person, waving her arms around. I don't think that's what he was looking for. And I don't think that Harry was looking for somebody who was a pain in the ass in the restaurant, but he ended up liking it,
Yeah. Well, obviously, I mean, well, per the movie anyway, for what we
Right.
saw. Now that scene, you were right. I did read about it that they wanted to add a scene that would make the movie less heavy on Billy Crystal because there was so much of him being funny and people like being able to identify with him. So they added that for Meg Ryan, and yeah, it was her idea to do the faking an orgasm, and they added the restaurant component to it to make it all the more awkward because, like you were saying earlier, when he was more troll-like, he was looking for those types of reactions, but this was sort of in that transitional period where he was now embarrassed by this, and he was embarrassed by a lot of the things that she was doing and talking about, right? Like she would, like when she was trying to put the letters in the mailbox, he was like, "What the fuck?" Come on, like it's embarrassing for him, and then he just grabs them all and shoves them in.
Yeah, I would have also. There's a few things about Sally. That's a great scene. So it doesn't match anything about Sally though. The I'll have what she's having scene. If you guys don't mind, can we discuss that really quickly?
I'd love to. Yeah. And I've actually been to that deli. It's Cat's Deli. They have a sign that is right up over where that was shot, and the woman with the killer line.
Yeah,
one of the best lines in movie time history, which was penned by Billy Crystal, is Rob Reiner's mother.
Oh.
And
I heard that it was ad-libbed by her.
In what I read, it was Billy Crystal came up with the line, but Rob Reiner's mother said it and just nailed it. Like it just killed. Like everyone cracked up.
That's great.
She lived to 94, I think, and in her obituary, like they made reference to it. So anyway, go ahead. I didn't mean to.
No, I love you. Okay, so if we look at her character, Sally, on no level, the way she was so embarrassed, like she would throw herself into situations when she was like, when she was talking about I've had plenty of great sex in the very first scene when they were on the road trip, and then everybody stops and looks at her and she's like, oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed, right? She gets thrown into situations where she's really embarrassed, and then she just kind of moves on. It's adorable. Okay. She's so gullible and naive, and he uses reverse psychology on her. And then he's like, fine, don't tell me. And then she's like, well, if you must know, she's so young. And then in that scene where she does that is so anti-Sally. It's not like her ever in any of the parts of the show, in any of the movie. So she was so offended by him just knowing she was offended because there's a lot of triggers that she wasn't even opening up to. Remember, she's closed off to her feelings. She's denying the truth of her having feelings for Harry. So because of that, she's judging his loose lifestyle, sleeping with women he doesn't love and he's not romantically inclined towards, and he's having sex with them, and she's judging it. And on some level, she's probably jealous, right? So when he starts talking about, oh, I know they're having a good time. Trust me, I know all about it. I know they're having a great time. She wanted to take him down a peg, and I do believe that she was negging him hard in that moment, and the roles were reversing a little bit, because that is not like Sally, except for her pride was wounded and she was teaching him a lesson, and that's why she faked that orgasm, to make him feel stupid. And that's pretty big, don't you think, for a movie to have a character go so far out of character?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's also maybe part of the maturation process. Not that she did it because she's a mature person, because it's a very immature thing to do,
Yeah.
but having the capacity to do it. Like young Sally would never have done that. But she developed the ability to, like you're saying, she was kind of lashing out at him by doing it, like trying to overly embarrass him. And she wasn't capable of that before, but now she is. So she has.
And she's had good sex at this point. She has. At this point, she's had good sex, and she would let him know what it was all about. I think that's hilarious.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's also a sort of a prelude to them actually sleeping together, because it reintroduces the idea of it, right? Because she's kind of demonstrating it in a way to where there's
a dare.
Yeah, almost, right? Like it's almost a visceral or more of an emotional thing, and that's kind of his trigger too, because he's a very emotionally driven person. I'm not sure what the spread is between the events of the Cat's Deli scene and when her and Joe break up, or no, Joe's getting married, right? That's the thing where she finally feels it. I think that was in the same period of them being friends, right? So that must have been pretty close together.
Yeah, she just couldn't believe when he was talking about sleep. Like, she's like, and maybe someday after that, we'll be having sex with them, sleeping with them. And he's like, oh, I slept with her. Right. I think she was knocking him down a peg because she wanted him to realize that he didn't know everything, and that she was just as smart as he was. I think there was definitely an equalizing of the playing field with that move on her part. And yeah, she made herself very sexual. That was pretty cool.
Do you buy...
we can't talk...
Oh, go ahead,
Daniel. Go ahead, Daniel.
I was going to take us another direction. So
okay, before we take it to another direction, we can't talk about this scene without talking about the Seinfeld episode where almost the exact same thing happens. I'm sure we've all seen it, where Jerry finds out that Elaine fakes and has probably faked, and many faked with him. And so then he gets so self-conscious about that he insists that they sleep together again so that he can make sure she has an orgasm. And I think in this movie, if they could have gone, I mean, I like the way the direction the movie went. They didn't need to belabor this aspect of it, but they could have played around with Billy going, did she fake that? I don't know. It's good though. I liked it.
There's a lot of Seinfeld-esque content here. And I know Seinfeld was, did it start in the same year as this movie came out? Was Seinfeld like 89 through the...
89. Yeah, 89.
Yeah, so it's right around the same time. And I always thought that looking for the obituaries to find rent-controlled apartments to be able to rent was a Seinfeld thing. But then it came up in this, and I'm like, oh, that must be where it's from. Or maybe they've used it in both a little bit. Because I think Elaine tries to get an apartment from someone who had died, right? In one of the later seasons of Seinfeld. So it must have originated here.
Yeah.
And of course, this is where we can rant a little bit about rent control, because they talk about how difficult it is to find an apartment in New York. And Billy Crystal's like, you might as well just mash up the classified section with the obituary section. So you can go, yeah, they leave behind, three children and an apartment on the Upper West Side.
With a wood burning fireplace. Yeah. That's good.
That's because these people would get in at the low price and then be there for a decade or two, and the market rates would have gone up around them, but they're in a rent-controlled apartment. So then the incentive is to try to get new renters in there, because then you can charge now market rates. And so it would incentivize the property owners to not take care of things to not be welcoming, to not be serving their clients, their customers, their tenants, because they want them to move out, because they're actually losing money by having those people in there,
Yeah.
because they're paying under market rate.
Mhm.
Now, the market is not only supply and demand, but it's also inflation, right? So like if you're trapping people's paying, the rent at a certain rate and then not accounting for inflation, I'm not sure if it did or not, but I know Walter Block had a paper that he ended up making into a book where he was showing pictures of Dresden after the bombings and Harlem and other areas of New York after rent control, and you couldn't tell them apart. They both looked like the same amount of damage. And it just goes to show, like when government intervenes and tries to control what people can do voluntarily with their own things, and it leads to all sorts of poor consequences and a lot of destruction. So that's my little side rant on rent control, and I'll post a couple of things on our show notes page at lastnighters.com/104 related to that. Robert, you got any rants on rent control for me?
Well, no, I mean, I could, but I just wanted to quickly jump in. I mean, we're probably kind of starting to run out of time, but you were mentioning that, it incentivizes landowners to get rid of their tenants. And yeah, they offer big cash bonuses if they'll just leave. Like my ex-stepbrother, Rain, he was offered, what, $25,000 or $35,000 to just get up and go, because you're just losing so much money. And you get an apartment, you're in there for like 20, 30 years, and yeah, you're paying like 50, 25, between 25 and 50% of market rate, if not less. It's crazy.
Oh yeah. And just a little bit more related to that is because the rent control was in place, they started asking for big deposits. Like, oh, you can move in and pay, $300 a month, but you got to give me 10 grand up front. And it was a way to like sort of offset some of that cost. And then then the city caught wind of this and outlawed that. So then they started doing a thing called key money. So if you wanted to rent an apartment, you had to buy the key, and the key was like 15 grand.
Well, I mean, people are gonna find a way. So that's
the market
about
finds
right.
a way.
Yeah. There's also a really good property rights little discussion in this movie. There's not a lot of libertarian stuff. There's not a lot of anarchist things other than social contracts with each other in negotiations. But they do a good job when he's like, when Harry's having a meltdown because he just saw Helen while he's singing Sorry with the Fringe on Top. And he goes to their house, to their friend's house, and they have the wagon wheel coffee table discussion, right? And he's like, you better write your name in your books because you're not going to remember who's whose, and you're going to be fighting over this plate. And I'm kind of like, yeah, good contracts. That's a really, there is a libertarian message right here. And if you're going to get divorced, it's just like any other association. You should be very clear about who owns what and what happens afterwards.
Yeah, it can lead to messiness. For sure, yeah. And a lot of problems that are just easily taken care of beforehand.
Mm-hmm. Write your name in your books.
Yeah,
good advice.
Well, where do you stand, Raylene, on prenuptial agreements, that sort of thing? And I'm sure you're all for them, but don't they take the romance out of things?
So do they take the romance out of things? What does that mean? No, I don't know. I'm poor. So is my husband. So we didn't have this problem. Okay.
Poor scientist.
I married for love, so I don't really know. I think that really rich people literally give a stipend to the person who's divorcing the rich person anyway. I mean, they know they're not going to get half. Does somebody deserve half if they didn't earn it? Probably not. I think
former Mrs. Bezos got half, didn't she? Or some
right?
huge...
Yeah, something crazy.
Like 35 billion or something.
Okay, so there is kind of like a cutoff in my opinion. When let's say lower middle class, upper middle class, any middle class and below. If a husband or a wife is raising the children so the other person can go to work and do their career, but the other person's taking the time off, there is an understanding that it is for the good of the family. So it makes sense that when things get split up, it's going to be the person that put their career on the back burner to raise the kids would have help raising the kids in the future because they're not going to have as much money. They're not going to be able to make as much money. They didn't get to go to college, or they didn't get to put in all those hours to be able to make the big bucks now. I get that. Again, this is all stuff that should be privately handled. I don't believe in the state. So, that's where I'm at with it. But if you marry rich and then you want to take half of it later, that just seems ridiculous. I just don't get it. I guess I don't need to be rich. I don't care. I'd rather make my own money and not have that kind of shit. I wouldn't fight it, that kind of thing. But I mean, if you're rich, and I mean, the child support alone, if you have kids when you're rich, is like so much money. Like any normal person, any normie could literally support their family on their child support her. Like she could support their entire, like her and her new boyfriend on the child support. If that's a rich person, you don't need to take their fortune. I just, whatever. Prenups are good. If I was rich, I'd get a prenup.
All right. Well said.
Okay, so how do you broach it to the person, your significant other?
Because he's
Hey, we're
planning
getting a
on being
prenup.
rich. He's got this entrepreneurial.
Okay, so this is how I look at it. I would be like upfront from the beginning when you're dating. Like upfront and say, look, this is really, I have goals. This is how I'd say it. I have a vision for my life. I have goals. There are some things that I don't want to bend on. And even if I'm in love, I don't want to bend on it because things can change quickly and I don't want to lose the footing that I've already created for myself. So you would negotiate that contract. So either somebody's with you for love and they're going to say, I'll sign whatever. And then another person might say, I'm going to sign this, but if I'm with you for 20 years, then I do believe that I should get something for taking care of all of your business at home and doing all these things. You negotiate it. Whoever isn't negotiating their contracts is at fault. Pay attention. Every one of us is responsible for what we do.
I think she's onto something there.
Women aren't stupid. So, and if they are being stupid, then that's on them. I mean, it's really sick to me that we infantilize people randomly and arbitrarily. And if women are everything that they say they are and want to be treated as, then they are responsible for negotiating what they want in their relationships. I'm so sick and tired of women blaming men for what they put up with. Men are the tits. Okay. Men are amazing. They're not that difficult to understand. Women seem to be the ones that are confusing everybody and themselves with what they say they want and what society is pressuring them to be. So I think When Harry Met Sally is far more intuitive about women than most of the bullshit that we see in media right now, because this is real. And I mean, real fast, the sex fantasy dream that she's explaining since she's a kid. I just want to go here really fast and just like explain that I thought that was hilarious. I started laughing my ass off when I was talking to my husband about it. And it's again, very counterculture because it's a very submissive type of dream. Like a man rips off her clothes and she's sexually into that. Like even as a child, she's titillated by it as a young person. Right. That's something that nobody wants to talk about, especially because of like what rape culture and the patriarchy, and women do like alpha males and we're just conditioned to pretend we don't. So that's what I think.
So that's what you got out of that, huh?
Mm-hmm. Sassy, right?
Yeah. All I got was that she was so anal that the only thing that changes in her dream was what she wears.
Yeah, well, I mean, either way, it was like, I think it's really funny that she doesn't seem very adventurous. It's not like a really provocative sex dream, but the fact that they were so close and she was sharing this sex dream, she's like, yep, that's it, right? But I actually think it shows that she had no control. Sally was super controlling of everything in her life because she felt like she had to be. And then we see that her fantasy was having no control. And I think there's a lot to be said for that, even though it's very covert and small. And I just think that that's really sweet of Sally. And I get her. She's cool.
All right. Well, I think she's pretty cool too.
Yeah.
And I was going to throw this quip talking about Billy Crystal getting divorced from Helen, because he said, "Don't fuck with Mr. Zero." Mr. Zero knew before he did that he was getting divorced.
Okay. How great is the scene where they're in a ball game? Here's another great scene from this movie. So I love again that we see a man who's really discussing what happened with his best friend. So they have a very intimate relationship and they're having this very intimate conversation where they have to do the wave. I just keep getting up and down doing the wave during this talk about don't fuck with Mr. Zero t-shirt. I think that it was the absurdity of the scenes in this movie are absolutely amazing because it does make sense that they're in a public place, they're at a ball game, but they're there to talk and to bond, and this is how guys have to do it because they're not just allowed to call each other on the phone and gab. Guys don't do that. So they show up at the game and they get really real, really deep and say the most emotional things going on for themselves. And there's a social pressure to voluntarily stand up and do the wave at a ball game, and they do it. I just think that's delish.
They got to go through these dude motions.
Yeah.
For cover, for masculine cover.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Now you mentioned that they couldn't talk to each other on the phone, but Billy Crystal and Rob Reiner actually did do this. It's shown in the movie as Meg Ryan and Billy Crystal talking, like watching the same show at the same time and falling asleep. Apparently they used to do that and have these conversations and watch the same shows while they were talking, having their dude bro time.
Uh-huh.
So
I think it should happen. I just don't think that guys, this is the truth, is that men have not been raised to be physically affectionate with other men. They're taught, little boys, especially in the generations before this, were not allowed to talk about their feelings. We're not allowed to appear weak. They're not allowed culturally to feel their feelings. So I really enjoy this movie because they show an emotional person in the 80s and how they feel their feelings and how they express their feelings. And it's through humor, sarcasm, storytelling, and observation, and at ball games with their friend. So I think that's really cool. But yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to throw my question out that I was going to ask a while ago, and I'll go to Robert first. Do you buy Billy Crystal as a leading man in a romantic comedy film?
I don't buy him as like an alpha, but I could see the appeal of him. Like, I think he's charming. He has plenty of charm, and he's witty and funny, and I guess he's not hideous, probably. So, yeah, I suppose so. Maybe, I don't know. I never really understood quite the appeal of Tom Hanks either, other than just the charm and the charisma, I suppose. So I don't know. I mean, I was always a big Meg Ryan fan.
Because she's so cute.
For obvious reasons. Yeah, she's adorable, gorgeous. Mm-hmm. I don't know what the women were getting out of the movies other than the relationship stuff and all the writing and all that. I don't know if they were imagining themselves with Tom Hanks or Billy Crystal, but I could easily imagine myself with Meg Ryan. So,
yeah, Tom Hanks seems like the everyman of our generation, where like we did It's a Wonderful Life last week. Jimmy Stewart was kind of that for times past, and Billy Crystal is more funny. He's like the jokester type. But he also kind of reminds me of those sitcoms where the dad's always kind of a dork or kind of messes up, and it's at the dad's expense, but they always have kind of a hot wife, like Everybody Loves Raymond or The King of Queens, or you name it. You pick a show, the wife's usually pretty good looking, and the guy's kind of
a schlub.
Yeah.
What is this though? I mean, let's get real, guys, because I'm the girl here. Let's just talk about this.
Right,
why? I mean, how common is this? Honestly, be honest. It's very common in real life.
Is it?
Yes. So I have to say that first of all, my husband is sexy AF. Okay. He is the cat's meow. And you know what I mean? So I like
meow.
Right? He makes me meow. I love this guy. And when I first met him, not attracted to him at all. So it's personality, personality, personality. Any guy who thinks it's not about personality is kidding themselves, because they just need to find a reason why they're not with somebody. I'm telling you, women, looks is like when they're being shallow, high, and they're being taught by culture that matters, and girls are emulating all this stuff about men. I mean, sorry, but third wave feminism has taught women to emulate the worst parts of men, and also men to emulate the worst parts of women. So, I mean, I could go into that forever, but they're all little bitches now, and women are trying to walk around like swinging dicks. It's really stupid. So, women are attracted to personality because that's what matters to them. They want somebody who's either smart and kind, nurturing to them, protective of them, and capable. I mean, that's what's more important. So looks are not as important to women as men think they are.
Well, isn't it more about like being a provider for the offspring that, biologically the woman is driven to desire? Like there's hormonal changes and things like that, like the biological clock we were talking about earlier, that kind of drives them to seek out potential mates who are going to make, a viable life going forward.
Yeah.
And does personality play into that? Is that like a key indicator?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. Someone's safe. I mean, I think a lot of women get it wrong, and they pick somebody who's a little too safe that isn't interesting enough for them. I think that you can get really wound up in somebody who wants to take care of you, and they don't. The women are doing the wrong thing by picking somebody who, it's like men are doing the wrong thing by picking someone only by looks. And women are doing the wrong thing by picking men who are going to be good providers, but that they are not genuinely interested by. You have to be challenged. And and that's important. And that's what Harry Met Sally is. They challenge each other. And I think that that's why people identify with it, because I know they need that, even if they don't recognize they do.
Okay. I'm going to shift the discussion one more time, then we get into some final summary and review. This is in my notes, but her joke about one of her early breakups with the guy that she apparently had great sex with.
Sheldon.
Sheldon. Drive me, you animal, drive me. Who broke up with her because he wasn't comfortable with the explanation for where were the Sunday panties, because she had panties that were days of the week.
What was the answer?
Well, the payoff is funny, because she says, well, they don't make Sunday because of God.
Because of God.
But they do make Sunday, at least for 4-year-olds, because my daughter has them, and she wears the right ones every day and gets very livid if she doesn't have them available for the day of the week that they are.
Where's your God now?
Yeah. So, yeah, apparently the intervening 30 years, the panty makers have now made Sunday panties.
I had Sunday panties in the 80s. I had the days of the week underpants also as a child, and I enjoyed the shit out of them. No pun intended. I legitimately had them. So I remember watching that movie going, I had Sunday. That didn't make any sense. But because God is really funny. Her very simplistic point of view in the first part of that movie is just adorable, isn't it?
Oh yeah. Yeah. She's very naive, very, very young, and very gullible. I think you said that earlier. Now, we don't know her origin prior to moving to New York, right? Like she went to University of Chicago. Was she from like the Midwest sort of Bible Belt? So maybe that's what might have played into the whole, because of where she's from, the religious aspect would have had things like that culturally, where they wouldn't make Sunday things, or like, stores would be closed on Sunday and things like that.
Maybe it's a day of rest and you're not supposed to wear underwear. It's like pants. Maybe you just deserve a day off.
One day of freedom per week. All right. Well, unless you guys have anything else to go over, we could get into summary and review. If Robert, you want to kick us off?
Sure, I would love to. So watching this movie reminded me of the last movie we did, It's a Wonderful Life, just in that it was a simple story, well told. It was a movie that relied on its writing, on its characters to tell a compelling story. It's really just a simple story of two people meet and fall in love, but each one has their own quirks, and it's fun watching them interact with each other. They're both quite charming. It's a movie that sinks or swims on whether you like the characters, because that's all you're getting. And I can't imagine someone not liking these characters. It is kind of Aaron Sorkin-y with its witticisms and snappy dialogue, but I found this movie to be more realistic than The Social Network, just because I bought Billy Crystal as a witty guy, and it wasn't as insane as some of those scenes in The Social Network. So this movie really, I don't know if it was this one or an earlier film, but really started my love affair with Meg Ryan and really kicked off the whole rom-com action. But I can see why. I can see why this really inspired, and I don't know how much of an influence on Seinfeld this movie had, but it sure seemed to. And deservedly so. This is a quite excellent film. It had me hooked the whole way. When the emotional beats happen at the end, I'm on board with it. Totally on board. I'm not sitting back there stoically watching with a blank face. I'm like involved. I'm rooting for these guys to get together. I really like the way it was written. I love the line from Billy Crystal, who's like, "I love you. I want to spend the rest of my life with you." It's like when you figure out that you want to spend the rest of your life with someone, you want it to start as soon as possible, or something like that. It was just like, what a great line. And I just butchered it, but you know what I mean? You remember it better than I could say it. It's just really well done. And I don't know if it's as funny today as it was back then. I mean, it probably was like really racy and pushing boundaries back then. And today it's kind of quaint, but it still has the charm to hold up, especially since it just plays off the male-female dynamic that, like I said, is pretty much as long as there's going to be humans. So this is a really strong movie. I'm giving this like an 8.5. It's as good as I think a rom-com as I've seen. I don't know. Maybe I like You've Got Mail better, but I'd have to go back and watch You've Got Mail again. So I just have better memories of You've Got Mail, but I probably like this movie better if I were to watch them back to back to back or something like that. But really, really strong. Great film. Highly recommended. Check it out.
All right. Well, I'm going to get your balls out of my purse, Robert. And You've Got Mail, huh? All right. Well, that's one that we were actually talking about doing. And I think that has a good angle because it's got the bookstore, like the little local shop versus the behemoth conglomerate, which, of course, now they're suffering because they can't compete with the likes of Amazon and the improved customer experience in that regard. But I also agree with you saying that this is a really good movie and it is a lot of fun. For me, it felt like kind of long, but I think it was because I looked at how the runtime was, like 90 minutes. And I was like, oh, this is going to go by quickly, and Billy Crystal's super funny and all this stuff. And it just dragged on for us. And I'm not sure exactly why that was. Maybe it's because my memory of it was a little bit fuzzy from it being so old, but it does for the most part hold up. And to your comment about it being quaint, I think in the mid 2000s, you could look back on this and it would be quaint. But I think in the problematic period of this is Trump's America, I don't think they'd view this as quaint. I think they'd view this horrifically. I think if you showed this to college kids right now who are woke, they would need a safe space after this, cookies and puppies and meditation and all that stuff. I think they'd be really upset by this. But I feel like it is a well done film, and Billy Crystal, of course, is amazing. He reminds me in a lot of ways of Bill Murray. Yeah, but maybe not.
Who was up for the movie, by the way?
Oh, that's right. Yeah. And he's also an excellent ad libber. In fact, I think Bill Murray is one of my favorite actors. Billy Crystal's, he's good. He's good. And I remember him doing the Oscars, and he did that like 3 or 4 years in a row, and he was good at that as well. But I think if he came out with this movie today, he would never have gotten the Oscar bit. Like Kevin Hart, I think it was it him who got disinvited this year
It was last year.
last year? Yeah. So I think
And it was for a joke about if his kid was gay, he would break his dollhouse or something. It was a joke.
Yeah, from like 2010. Like
Yeah.
a tweet
Mhm.
8 or 9 years ago.
Yeah, I hate this, going into the archive to find some way to deplatform somebody. It's it's pretty ridiculous, especially when it's like, what is your senses of humor, guys? Like, you can't be funny anymore. It's ridiculous. But I'm going to go with an 8 on this. That's my score. And we'll go to Raylene. We'll have what she's having here.
Okay. Well, first of all, I love everything you guys both just said. So, I disagree about You've Got Mail, but you gave me a lot of leeway in that. So I think that you would actually like When Harry Met Sally better, Robert. And I think that you're on the right track. Because I have watched that a couple years ago, and I remember thinking it's better than when I first saw it, not as good as When Harry Met Sally. Because When Harry Met Sally, this is quintessential best rom-com ever made. I'm sure of it. It's and the reason why it goes so long is because they do such a good job at jam packing it full of content, full of one-liners, full of hilarious facial expressions and everything. To you, Daniel. So I'd have to say I love the snapshot of the tail end, like the women's lib movement. And like these are all very independent women that have careers and everything, but still want a family. I think they did a really good job of showing that the culture is not always your friend. So I really enjoyed that. I also really enjoy the fact that both of them didn't know how to do it the old-fashioned way in this modern world, which is really funny because it was in like 89, and at the time it was very modern. I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10 for all movies, and that's really high for a rom-com. Black and Gold is how you guys do that. Yes, so good.
Yeah.
Watch it, guys. It's so funny. My daughter, who is totally a feminist, totally like SJW-ish, by the way, I had nothing to do with that.
Wait, what?
Yeah, I know, right? She's 21. What can I do? She has to this is her rebellion. It's really cute. So, she loves this movie. If she loves this movie, it's because it literally is that good.
Does
So
she find it problematic?
no, she doesn't, because she was charmed by it. She couldn't even help herself. She got tricked right into it. She stumbled into it. So the writing's amazing. I love the evolution of the characters. I love how
Patriarchy got her.
Yeah, Patriarchy got her over and over again. Those very small pockets she has. I have to hear about it all the time. I really enjoyed the maturation over time, and really quickly. Another thing that was amazing about it is how Rob Reiner went around getting couple stories from old couples that have been together for a very long time. And the way the actors portrayed these real stories was so good. They have the Japanese couple about going over to the village and sneaking over to see his arranged marriage, and that he thought she looked nice. And but the best one out of all of them is the one with the lady talking. So the man starts, and then the lady speaks halfway into his sentence. So he starts a sentence, and then she starts to give more information on the other side. So you're trying to listen to both of them talking at the same time. You remember this couple? Like
The
halfway through the
elevator
movie?
one?
Pardon?
The elevator people? The elevator couple?
Yeah. And she keeps
That was
talking.
the cutest.
Okay,
That was
it's
the
the best one.
cutest one.
And the timing on this is so good that it would be the best short film. I mean, it is unbelievably good timing. And what I loved about that is that she kept talking over the top of him halfway through, but you're trying to hear both of their stories. And then one of them would say something kind of important to the story that was really romantic, and the other one would stop and repeat what the other one said. And they batted that ball back and forth in between all of the interrupting storytelling, which was just unbelievably choreographed. And if you don't care about this movie, at least watch it for the old people, because it's just lovely.
It is. And Daniel, to your point about it being long and kind of dragging, I thought it was long, but I thought it was taking its time and really getting us involved in these characters. Is a lot like It's a Wonderful Life in that respect, that it trusted the audience to get into these characters and to not get bored during it. I thought it was great that way.
Okay, and this probably just goes back to, I listen to things at 2 times speed, so
Yes.
played at normal speed is like, it's aggravating. It's like trying to put those letters in one at a time into the mailbox for me. I just want to cram them in, just get it done. But overall, I think an enjoyable film, and we all gave it pretty sparkling reviews. And Personality Plus, Raylene, thank you for being our guest again. We always enjoy having you on, and we'd love to have you on again in the future. You name it your favorite movie. We'll do it next time.
I have another favorite. I'm sure of it. I want to do Wayne's World with you guys.
All right, mark it down.
Okay.
Wayne's World. Yeah, that'll be a good one. And speaking of returning guests, we're going to be back next week with Rachel Kennerly of Cannabis Heals Me. We're going to be doing M. Night Shyamalan's The Village, which should be a good one. So we'll be looking forward to that. And if you guys like what we do here, Robert's got a few things to mention. And I'll just open it with Happy New Year, everyone. And Robert, what can they do if they want to help us have a better 2020? And we wish that for them as well.
Well, you can do any number of things, starting from the smallest things like talking about it, mentioning the show to your friends and family, to your neighbors, to buying some merch on Trubster.com or subscribing on YouTube or on Apple Podcasts. You could do any number of those things. You could join our Facebook group, Actual Anarchy Cadre. That's like free to join, isn't it, Daniel?
Well, it's meant for the Patreon supporters, but I add a few people, and if I'm feeling generous, and it's a holiday season, so yeah, the Actual Anarchy Cadre. It's a sanctum of sanity in a clown world or something like that. I forget it has a super long title, but hit us up on Patreon or just PM me, and I will get you in the group.
That's right. Yes, you can support us on Patreon if you actually want to give actual Federal Reserve notes, or we're not set to take Bitcoins or anything like that yet, are we, Daniel?
No. I'd much rather have the counterfeit stuff.
Yeah, it's so much better.
It still spends.
For now.
So yeah, those are some of the things you guys can do for us, and of course, smash the like button and all that. And you can find the Patreon at lastnighters.com/Patreon. You can find the show and the show notes at lastnighters.com/104, and also on the Launchpad Media, where they're always launching new ideas in your direction, as well as Raylene Show Blastoff with Johnny Rocket. And we'll be back next week. We might do a little bit of Kathleen Turner Overdrive after this. So we'll say, what do we say here? Oh, yes.
Good night from last night.
All right. Yeah, it took me a minute to find the right button. So sorry about the awkward pause at the end of the episode there. So we're going to continue for a few more minutes on the Actual Anarchy podcast version. And I have a question, and I'll also share my story. But Raylene, you talked about, I think in the pre-show and maybe during the show proper, your relationship with your husband and how you had a similar period of time where you guys were friends and there was no romantic involvement, and then eventually you learned enough about each other to realize that you were right for each other. How did you guys meet? What's the origin? Because for me and my wife, we have capitalism and technology to thank for us getting together, because we met on the internet, and we tell our kids that mom went shopping on the internet and found dad.
Aww. I'll tell you, I worked at so I was in a terrible marriage that I was leaving. It was really, I mean, I used to be very ashamed of this story, but I'm going to share it because I'm too old to be sad anymore about me not living up to societal expectations. I had 2 kids and I was married, and I got married when I was 18. And my husband at the time, who I don't really even, I finally released it and just don't even count him as a husband. It was very, very extremely neglectful. And I went and got a job so I could leave. And it was the really sad how abusive it was. Because I was so ruined. I was 22 years old, and I got this job, and I remember people were nice to me, that my coworkers liked me. They thought I was funny and they had fun with me, and I remember it it was so unreal. I was so brainwashed being in this relationship that I couldn't believe people liked who I was or thought I was fun, or let alone any positive thing that they were showing to me. I didn't believe it. And which is a really sad state of affairs, but that's what happens when you're raised to not believe that you are as good as you are. Like, it's really important how we raise our kids, and to um, help people that are victims of abuse to get out. So I worked at Denny's, and it was my dream come true. I love serving old people. I love taking care of people. I love meeting people and having fun with them. And I met this guy that used to work there. And the first time we met, I'll tell you guys, it's really funny. Just like Billy Crystal, the whole thing. Um, I went out after work. I said, okay, I can go out for like an hour, and then I have to go home. And I'm hanging out with my girlfriends at the end of a table. And my husband now, Justin, is sitting over here on the other side of the table, and he's trying to yell to get my attention. Now, I didn't understand it. It's because I was smoking hot. I didn't know that at the time. I thought I was a hideous old lady. I was 22, and he couldn't get enough of it. So he's over here trying to get my attention, and he's yelling about, is there lanolin in my lotion? And I'm like, no. I'm not going to talk to this guy because I don't talk to people, men, and I'm like, no, thanks. And I didn't talk to him. So later in the night, I already found him obnoxious, is what happened. And then later in the night, I'm arguing with an entire party about libertarianism. Okay, this is back in the dizzy. And I'm arguing with the whole party about how free markets are the best markets and everybody's wrong and the government shouldn't, and that kind of stuff. So I'm kind of already in a fight with everybody, but I'm like keeping it like I'm cool and low key. And he tries to get my attention and says, "What do you think about me?" And I think I was already in fight mode. So I looked at him and I said, "Well, I think you're pompous and arrogant, and I don't think I like you very much," is what I said, which is nothing like me. I'm the nicest person. I don't know what I was thinking. So I cut him down. And of course, now I hear the story later, and he was like, "This girl's so like wicked brave. She's up there like arguing with everybody." And like, he was like, "She's smart." So he wanted to talk to me, and he was trying to get my attention. And I was like, you know, like took out his leg. Then he tries to argue with me about the word pompous and what it means. So I completely destroy him. And then he goes, "Oh," and I was like, mic drop. And then I walked away. Well, now he's in love. So he decides that he's gonna try to make up and be friends with me the next day. And then so we meet at my job, and where I'm working there, and he's talking to me and whatever. And he ended up giving me food that he made. And I'm eating it with my hands like a disgusting pig, because I'm like that. You know what I mean? I'm like, "Oh, wow, you made this?" I'm like, "Oh, this is so good." Right. And he was like, "God damn, I'm in love." Right. So then, so he realizes I'm married. I'm like, I'm very unhappily married. I'm leaving him, but I'm not interested in anybody. That's what's happening. And we ended up being really good friends. He couldn't help himself. He was allowed to be himself with me. It was like the only real relationship he actually had, where this 22-year-old young man who had toxic friends, who wasn't happy, who didn't have a father, who didn't know how to embrace his power. He got that from me, and from him I got a mirror of how somebody could be interested in what I had to say and genuinely talk to me about every topic. And he's brilliant. And so of course I was super interested in just talking to him all the time. And I just liked his quirkiness, and he was so real and he was so honest and he was never disrespectful to me. Or about my marriage. It wasn't like that. So it was that we were both doing like there's no way kind of thing. He knew that. He knew that if he was tried to be anything other than my friend, then I would never talk to him again. And we did that for a really long time. And I remember one time we're driving around the block and we're listening to some shit music. What was it? Like it was Modest Mouse. Listen to Modest Mouse in the car. And we're driving around. And he's supposed to drop me off. I didn't want to get out of the car, and he kept driving around my block. And I remember looking at him, and I'm not a dishonest person. I'm extremely honest and real. And I remember just all of a sudden it dawned on me that what was happening. And I looked at him and I was like, and I said his name and I said, Justin. And then I couldn't talk. Like there's nothing, I couldn't say anything because I was like, right. I couldn't say it. And he looked at me and he said, Raylene. And he looked at my eyes, and it was very real. And it was just like the scene where Harry and Sally slept with each other. But it was more intense, and it was very real. And that's when we didn't say anything, because we knew if we said anything, then that we had to stop. And so that's when I left my husband, and that's when I got a management job, and that's when I decided to move out, and that's when I decided to, I had to, like, that was it. So, and we have been together for almost 19 years. So, and we have 3 of our own kids now.
Wow. Wow, that puts my story to shame. But
I don't know. That's I mean, I've had a lot of people say some nasty things to me about it, and it's okay. My husband always says, whenever people tell him stories, and they'll be like, she left me for this guy, and they'll be complaining. And he goes, are they still together? Because we understand that sometimes it works out, and that you are supposed to leave, and sometimes you are supposed to be with somebody else. And I mean, it really gives us a lot of grace for other people.
Yeah, no, it sounds like it did work out for you guys, and it almost like it echoes this movie a bit. And it sounds to me, just in how you're describing it, in the New Year's before they actually fall in love with each other.
There it is. Mm-hmm.
It's where they're about to kiss, and they do that kind of dance and embrace. Mm-hmm. You can see the look on their face.
Yeah,
where they both know that they want more, but they're not so sure. And then they do the whole Joe's getting married, so they sleep with each other and kind of ruin it for a while.
Because of what happened with me and Justin, I was very naive. I was only 22, but I had because I was living at home since I was 18, stay-at-home mom kind of thing. I had a baby right away. I just didn't know. So I was very, very, very naive, and I would never have been friends with him if I would have known that was the wrong thing to do. But that men and women can't be friends. So I have to tell you, ever since I've been with my husband, I am like, I can be friends with men, but I'm very careful. Like, I don't play games because I'm not stupid. I'm like, nope. Like, I have rules. Like, no, thank you.
Right. That's probably a good idea.
Yeah.
And one thing I wanted to mention during the main portion of the show, but the look on Billy Crystal's face the morning after, is priceless. When he's laying in the bed with her, he's like, his eyes are just like staring. How the fuck do I get out of here?
Yeah.
So well done. Well, thanks for the additional content there for the Actual Anarchy show. This is episode, what is it now? 161 of the show. So show us and everything at actualanarchy.com/161. Join us next week, everyone, for The Village with Raylene, with Rachel from Cannabis Heals Me. So we'll be back next week. Happy New Year and maximum freedom, everyone.